Hey there, it's Steve from Serious Keto, and this is the Not So Serious Keto video podcast. Let me start by telling you just how much fun I had reading the comments on last week's podcast. You guys are awesome. And in fact, I think a number of you may have a future in comedy writing. And for those of you who aren't exactly sure what I'm talking about, last week during the podcast, I did a little bit of a segment on Jeff Foxworthy and his comedy routine on You May Be a Redneck. And I invited all of you to see if you could come up with some funny qualifying statements for You Might Be Keto. And you did not let me down. There were some really great ones in there that actually made me LOL. And as I read through them, there were more that have popped into my head. I'm sure there's been some that have popped into your heads as well. But one of the ones that I thought up, I don't know if this is funnier than yours, but it was, if you can calculate net carbs on a package quicker than Rain Man, you might be keto. So whether you left a comment or not, or this is still new to you and you just want to see what I'm talking about, here's the link to last week's podcast. I encourage you to go check it out. I can definitely see myself doing this a lot more in future podcasts. It's just so much fun getting that interaction between all of us. So I'll try and come up with these sort of things periodically. So one of the things you may notice, and this is not the Easter egg, this is just me. I had some blood drawn today for my annual physical, and I should have the results of that in time for I don't know if I'll do it in a podcast next week or if it'll be its own segment. If it winds up being interesting, I will probably make it its own video. I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's gonna be interesting, especially because I have at least probably 10 years worth of lipid profiles that I can refer to from before I went keto. So now to see after 2 years on keto what it looks like, that should be pretty great. But the physical itself felt like something we could have just done over a webcam. I mean, kind of felt like it was phoned in a little bit. And I get it with the whole COVID thing, but it still felt like a remarkably not comprehensive physical. I mean, my doctor, he didn't look in my ears, he didn't look up my nose, he didn't look in my throat. There was no hernia check, no prostate check. Not that I'm disappointed about that. My doctor's got really big hands, so the fact that we didn't have to do a DRE, I'm actually okay with that. And this next little segment might be more applicable. Well, it's definitely more applicable to the fellas, because we're the ones with the prostates. But nowadays on websites for hospitals and medical centers, they have profiles of the doctors. You know, they can talk about where they went to school, their various philosophies on health and well-being, things like that. To me, once you get over 40 and you're a guy, I think the thing I'm most concerned about is hand size. Like, I do not want a doctor that's got great big Shaquille O'Neal, he can palm a basketball sort of hands. I want like nice, petite, like ballerina type hands. But turned out not to be applicable this time because I don't think he even touched me. You know, he did sort of poke at my abdomen a bit. I don't know what he was looking for, but I guess he didn't find anything because he said, you know, I'm great as far as my health goes. I'm in an entirely different place than I was a couple of years ago, health-wise. Even with the whole quarantine 15, I'm back down to like quarantine 8 in terms of pounds gained. And I think a lot of that has to do with just bad sleep and cortisol and stress. But we're going to get that taken care of. But the fact that I, a couple of years ago, was on 2 medicines, 3 doses for blood pressure daily. Now I'm on none. I was taking pantoprazole for acid reflux. Not anymore. So to be in a situation where there are no little amber colored bottles in my medicine cabinet, it's a great feeling. It really, I'm sold on this keto thing. I don't know that my doctor is, but we don't have that conversation. One final little thought on going into the medical center. There are a lot of overweight and obese people there. And I'm not talking about patients. It's strange to me that patients generally look healthier and less overweight than the staff. And I'm talking doctors, nurses, receptionists, lab techs, just across the board. I don't know. These people, I think they need to learn. They need to learn a little bit about keto, maybe the fact that the standard American diet just doesn't work. It's hard for me to want to take medical advice from someone that is 100 pounds overweight. I feel like they are not exactly the role model for me. Anyhow, that's just Steve's opinion. But I'm going to loop back to this a little bit later in the video when we do a review of The Case for Keto by Gary Taubes. So teaser, not reviewing it quite yet. In addition to the "you might be keto" comments that I got last week, I had a number of people talk about dislikes and not understanding why someone would click the dislike button on a video, and also asking, do I ever click dislike on a video? So let me cover that right now. I believe that there are some people that subscribe to my channel purely to give me a dislike. As odd as this sounds, the reason I believe it is because within minutes of me posting any video, I get a couple of dislikes. And generally by noon on any day that I post a video, I have at least 8 dislikes. And it's pretty consistent in that 7 to 8 dislike range. So those are just a couple of data points that lead me to believe that there are some people that I've just maybe rubbed the wrong way, or maybe they're anti-keto or something like that, and they just get in and give me the thumbs down. My attitude on that is, if that's what your life is all about, that you derive some sort of satisfaction out of leaving a thumbs down for me, then go ahead. If it improves your life, knock yourself out, hit that thumbs down button. It still counts as engagement in the YouTube algorithm, so good for me. Now, in terms of what I would click a dislike on, I rarely click a dislike. Once you're a content creator and you know the sort of effort that goes into making video content, it's very hard, I think, to click a thumbs down, because people are putting in some work, blood, sweat, tears to bring video content out to people. The couple of things that do kind of irk me a little bit, and not a ton, just a tiny little bit. First is clickbait. And I get the reason behind clickbait. In fact, very often I'm tempted to have some sort of a clickbaity title or thumbnail just because I know it's going to increase viewers. But I think when you do it, you need to be honest about it. So to give an example of a type of clickbait that I don't like, there was a particular keto doctor, and the thumbnail was apple cider vinegar, hype or real, or something like that, hoax or legit. Well, I think most of us know, and I know that he knows, that it's legit. So why create a thumbnail like this? I would prefer to have something a little more upfront and honest and say, top 5 benefits of apple cider vinegar, or something like that. The other clickbait that I see often, and this I totally understand, is the I did such and such for 30 days and these are the results. So, I walked 10,000 steps for 30 days and these are the results. To me, that is sort of an enticing clickbait, because it's a mystery. What's going to happen? What is it? But if I watch one of those and it turns out that there's no payoff at the end, whatever happened is just boring and disinteresting, then I'm kind of tempted to give a thumbs down, because you hooked me and I gave you some of my time and I got no payoff. So those are some instances where I'd give a thumbs down. And listening to this, you may think that I give a lot of thumbs downs, but I don't. I rarely do. It takes a lot to kind of push me to that point. But another category is the really long cooking videos that are unnecessarily long, like there's no judicious editing that goes on. There was one chaffle video I saw where we spent 6 minutes watching the chaffle cook in the Dash Mini. That was it. I don't get that unless you're specifically trying to get a video to reach a certain length. But that I don't care for. In terms of bad comments, that's another thing. I don't see the upside to doing that, because content creators have so much control over their comment section. From the really simple act of clicking a thumbs up and a heart, which is going to elevate comments, and then you see one that you don't really like and you can click thumbs down, and that can push it way down in the list to the point that it may never be seen. Content creators can delete comments as well, and they can also mute viewers. So people can leave a comment, but only they see it, no one else sees it. And I'm not sure how often content creators use these tools? I suspect fairly often. But to me, just knowing that whatever you say is probably not going to be seen, unless it's a constructive sort of criticism, but just getting out and being nasty, that is probably never going to be seen. And when I think about those sort of comments and people that leave those sort of comments, the nasty, sort of mean ones, mean-spirited ones, I'm reminded of a metaphor that my dad used to use, which is, it's like wetting your pants while wearing dark corduroys. It may give you a warm feeling, but no one else really notices. On the flip side, I hit the like button a lot. And again, part of that is because as a content creator, I know the amount of work that goes into creating a video. And if someone put some work into something that was helpful or informative or entertaining to me, that deserves a like. So I'm always hitting the like button for people. And I hope that if you like my videos, you're hitting the like button as well. But with that, I think we're going to take a brief little ad break. And then when we come back, I'm going to talk about the case for keto. The book, The Case for Keto by Gary Taubes, showed up on my Amazon suggested list probably first quarter of last year. I know it was fairly early in the year, and I saw that the release date wasn't going to be until December 29th of 2020. And I thought maybe that was just a placeholder date and that it would be coming out earlier, but it didn't. It actually came out on the 29th, which is when I started reading it. Now I'm going to start by saying that I am a Gary Taubes fan. I really, really enjoy him anytime I see him in an interview or in a documentary. He is articulate, he is rational, and I think he is a very good representative for someone that you want to have speaking about keto. He doesn't come off like a zealot, he doesn't come off like a maniac or anything like that. He just seems very common sense, very calm. Some people complain about his voice. His voice doesn't bother me. Like I said, I like the guy. He is clearly very smart and very well read, and that is reflected in his writing style, which from time to time is awfully complex. I think there are instances where he really makes a sentence just difficult to read. I don't think it's intentional, but there are some sentences where I counted the full number of words in the sentence, and there were a lot that are like 80, 90 words long. That is a complex sentence. And these are not sentences that are like lists where you say, for example, here are all the things that you can eat while on keto, and then list 80 things. No, these are actual sentences that I think probably could be broken into 2 or 3 sentences and just make it a lot easier to read. So I'd like to cover some of the pros and cons of this book. I think that's a good way to sort of break it up. One of the first things, and it's one of the biggest themes in this book, is recognizing that people are different. He doesn't make the case that keto is perfect for everybody. There are some people that can eat the standard American diet and seemingly not be affected by it. They stay lean and apparently healthy, and he doesn't make the argument that those people should go keto. So I think by not taking a really dogmatic approach to keto and saying that it's for everyone, I think that makes him come off more respectable. I think people aren't going to want to fight so rapidly. I think of the metaphor for judo, which is when you fight a judo master, it's like wrestling an empty jacket. And that's sort of what this feels like it's written like. That's not the best sentence I've ever spoken. But he doesn't get especially confrontational in the book. And I think when you read something that is very confrontational and you don't agree, you're probably, like this. You're gonna push back. Whereas if something is less confrontational, then perhaps you're more apt to listen and absorb. Now the flip side to that is I never really felt that in this book, which has a title, The Case for Keto, you would think that it would be a really robust argument for keto, where he really sticks a flag in the ground and says, yeah, keto is the thing. And he doesn't. So I might consider that a little bit of a con as opposed to a pro. Additionally, there was a lot of redundancy, I felt, in the first probably 2/3 of the book. There were times when I would read a paragraph and feel that I had read that paragraph a couple of chapters ago. There are a lot of things that he references multiple times. And I understand that when you're trying to make a case, that one of the arguments or one of the things that they say you should do is tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. It didn't necessarily feel like that. It just felt like he told me something. It felt like he did that second step sort of repeatedly, talking about either people that were anti-keto, especially U.S. News and World Report, some of the pro-keto people. He brings up a lot of other authors, in particular Malcolm Gladwell and Michael Pollan. And there's a fair amount of redundancy in that regard, especially with references to Michael Pollan. I think the quote from Pollan that Taubes keeps using is I think it's like, move more, eat less, especially plants. Not eat less plants, but eat plants if you're going to eat. I totally probably butchered that. But Taubes references that phrase repeatedly. I also feel like, given the number of studies that are out there, and Taubes quotes a number of different studies, both flawed standard American diet studies and very comprehensive low-carb, high-fat studies, that he really could have, like I said, he could have made a stronger argument. There was just a whole lot of maybes in this book. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Maybe, though I'm healthy now, I won't be healthy in the future. That sort of thing. I felt it was a little bit tentative at times. Now, as the book goes on, especially about the final third, I do feel he gets a little bit more firm in his case for keto. And one of the arguments that you often get from the anti-keto people is, well, yeah, you may be doing great now, but who knows long term? And he admits, yeah, who does know long term? But why would I sacrifice now for long-term, a long-term unknown? I definitely know that I feel better now. My weight is down. All of my metabolic markers have improved, with the possible exception of LDL, which he also talks a lot about, and whether LDL is really that big of a concern. But I think it is a pretty respectable argument to say, I know how it makes me feel now, and I've got medical proof as to how it makes me feel and what it's doing to my body now. So I am making an educated gamble that this is going to continue. I think he probably could have taken it another step as well. So say someone says, well, you should work out more. You should run every day, 10 miles or something. You could say, well, maybe that makes you feel great now, but how are you going to feel 10 years from now, 20 years from now? You don't know. So you could really kind of flip that argument back on them. The biggest thing about whether or not I would recommend this book to any of you is I'm not exactly sure who it's for, to be honest. It's not something that you're pitching to standard American diet people or vegans to try and convince them to go keto. It's not a real good book for beginners. In fact, he doesn't really get into what you should and shouldn't eat until maybe the final quarter of the book. He spends very little time, a couple of pages max, I think, on intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. So it's not really a guide to keto. I think it's maybe a good book for those of us that are keto advocates and want to increase the arguments that we can make in favor of keto, or maybe give us a book that we can recommend to our doctors if our doctors feel that keto is not a good thing and that we shouldn't be on it. Aside from that, I'm not sure who this book is for. So if any of you have read it and in your mind can think of a good target audience for this book, please let me know down in the comments below. On the whole, I don't regret that I read it, but like I said, I'm not sure who I would recommend it to. And now to close things out, last week's Easter egg, pretty obvious, everyone got it. It was a Darth Vader bust. It's actually a telephone, and we don't have a landline anymore. Plus, I disconnected it because it would just terrify me every time it went off. Hello? Normally his head moves, I think, to make it easier to get the handset, but that doesn't seem to work real well anymore. I think I need to take this thing apart and see if there's something kind of gumming up the gears inside. It's also pretty loud, so I'll likely have to, in post-processing, lower the volume on this. Let's see here, demo. Ready? So I could hear the gears sort of trying to move inside his head, like to twist it. It also, there's some sound effect buttons. You can get like a lightsaber sound, but like I said, when you're sitting watching a movie or reading a book or something like that and someone would call you on this and it made that noise, I would just jump out of my chair. So, pretty cool. Kind of fun. I don't know, unless you're not a Star Wars fan, then it's completely not cool, and that was like the worst 1 minute of this video for you. So with that, I am going to wrap up this week's podcast. As always, thank you for watching. Oh, and if you like the video, click that like button. Now, thanks for watching or listening.